Hello and a very warm welcome to Middle East Matters. Coming up in the show, both of the brothers who carried out the attack on French satirical newspaper Charlie Hebdo trained with Al-Qaeda in Yemen. One local journalist remembers meeting one of them and tells us what Said Kouachi was like. Sentenced to 1,000 lashes for insulting Islam, a Saudi blogger is publicly flogged. Rights groups say his case is part of a wider crackdown on freedom of speech. And daring to dance in the desert. Young Iranians let their hair down and turn up the volume. Partying illegally, they remain determined to gain greater freedom. This week saw the worst terror attack in France in decades. In total, 17 people were killed. 4 of the victims were Jewish and their bodies flown to Jerusalem for burial. A ceremony there held with the Israeli President and Prime Minister. Similar services held for the 13 others gunned down and tributes paid across the region, as Alex Turnbull reports.
A large gathering in Beirut, a candle vigil in Gaza City. Across the Middle East, crowds took to the streets to pay tribute to the victims of the Paris terrorist attacks.
We are in front of the French Cultural Center in order to send a message in solidarity with the people of France and to tell them we are with you in such difficult times.
In Turkey, where the government has tightened its grip on the media, cartoonists came out in support of the Charlie Hebdo victims. A photo of Volansky, taken in 2002 in Istanbul, was printed on the front page of Yemen. The Turkish weekly is considered a sister publication to the French satirical magazine. Local journalists say they, too, face violent threats.
Threats are part of the job. We cannot work without them. They are our fuel. The more threats and insults we receive, the more we tell ourselves that we did a good job.
Their colleagues in Cairo are also regularly dragged into court. Yet reactions to the tragedy were widespread in Egypt, a country where criticizing religion often remains taboo. The online newspaper Mada Masr was born during the revolution. Its journalists hope the tragedy in France will encourage Egyptians to fight for the freedom of the press.
For us, it was very shocking news. It was sad. It was depressing. I just hope that an event like this will open up an important debate. These are some of the problems and the threats that we confront as cartoonists working here in Egypt.
Reporters Without Borders has strongly condemned the widespread crackdown in both Turkey and Egypt, which come in respectively at number 154 and 159 out of 180 countries on the NGO's Freedom of Press Index.
The Paris attacks were carried out by 3 men. 2 brothers, Sharif and Said Kouachi, carried out the shooting on the satirical weekly Charlie Hebdo. Both of those men are now reported to have travelled to Yemen, where they trained with Al-Qaeda in 2011. France 24 has tracked down a local journalist who met with one of the Paris attackers on a visit there in 2009. Here's what he had to say about Said Kouachi's life in Sana'a.
The Tabari district of the Yemeni capital, close to Sana'a's old city. This is the building that housed the language school where Said Kouachi enrolled in early 2009. Among the others studying there, Nigerian Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalib. Known as the underwear bomber, he was convicted of attempting to detonate explosives on a flight from Amsterdam to Detroit in 2009. The international media descended on Sana'a to investigate. This Yemeni journalist was working as a translator and vividly recalls a meeting with the man he says was Said Kouachi.
When we visited this district with a German journalist, we saw children playing football. Among them was a young man. I immediately knew he was a foreigner, and I asked him if he knew Umar. He had a nice way about him. He told us he knew Umar, they were studying together, but that it had been a while since he'd seen him in class.
During this stay in Yemen, Said Kouachi is said to have concentrated on learning Arabic, but it's believed he then returned in 2011 with his brother Sharif to train with Al-Qaeda.
Saeed seemed so nice. I was very surprised to see his picture in the media as the perpetrator of the attack against Charlie Hebdo.
As the security situation deteriorated in Yemen over recent years, it was noted that many students passing through this language school ended up joining Islamic organisations. The authorities closed the school. It's been converted into apartments, while the dormitory where Saeed Qawashi lived now houses the tourist police.
50 lashes, the first of 1,000. A Saudi blogger convicted of insulting Islam was brought to a public square and flogged. Last May, Raif Badawi was sentenced to 10 years in prison and 1,000 lashes. His crime? Criticising the kingdom's influential clerics who follow a very strict interpretation of Islam.
Lashed in public 50 times every Friday for the next 19 weeks. That is the fate facing Saudi Arabian blogger Raif Badawi, part of a punishment handed down by the Saudi Arabian courts. He's also been sentenced to 10 years in jail and fined around €226,000. His crime? Criticising religious leaders and suggesting more liberal political measures.
Up until the very last minute, I thought it was impossible for Saudi Arabia to do something like this. Something which is so offensive towards another human being.
The co-founder of the now banned website, the Liberal Saudi Network, has been in prison since his arrest in 2012. After Badawi was detained, his family fled to Egypt and Lebanon before being granted political asylum in Canada. Since then, his wife has been gathering support from human rights groups.
I haven't spoken directly with Raif. I spoke with the president of the Human Rights Commission in Jeddah, who sent someone to see the injuries. I've also spoken with his sister, who was there when they carried out his sentence.
Reporters Without Borders and Amnesty International are among two of the groups to have launched a petition calling on King Abdullah to grant the 30-year-old clemency.
This sentence sends out a message to Mr. Badawi, but it's not just for him, it's for everyone who right now stands up to defend freedom of expression in Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia enforces a strict interpretation of Islamic law and cracks down on what it considers domestic online criticism, which often carries harsh punishments.
Western-style dancing or drinking alcohol runs the risk of heavy fines, lashing, imprisonment or even the death penalty in Iran. Yet, despite this danger, some, mostly young middle-class Iranians, continue to demand greater freedom. Driving into the desert and literally letting their hair down, a number of them agreed to speak openly to our reporters about what their life in Iran is like.
Travelling through a desert in the heart of Iran are a group of young people the Iranian regime would prefer were kept hidden from view.
Scarf time, please. Scarf time.
When the group passes through a village, the girls put on headscarves. The eyes of the Basij, the regime's militia, are always open, even in these remote parts of the country. A few hundred meters down the road, they take their scarves back off. When they reach their destination, this salt lake, the desert quickly transforms into a dance floor. Omid, Nilofen and Pegar are all between 27 and 28 years old. They've left town life behind them and found their way here through their desire for freedom. These mainly middle-class young people have agreed to be interviewed without hiding their faces, saying they're not afraid to discuss any topic. Omid is the owner of this place. His long-haired appearance may suggest he's always been an outsider in his country, but that's not the case. His story reflects the complexity of Iranian social life.
I'm a son of general in revolution regard, and I was Basij. Even in university, I was chairman of Basij office. Here is 800 kilometers far from Tehran. And they're coming every weekend, like many buses. If you stop them, don't go there for dancing, or you're not allowed to go, girls and boys, you know, then maybe you can stop this point. But they will find another week, another point, you know.
Despite the police checks, some buses manage to get through each weekend. The first few partygoers arrive just before dusk. Not far away, Omid films a police car. Even out here, the authorities are still a threat. By nightfall, there are already around 300 people gathered here. But if caught by the authorities, they'd be thrown in prison immediately. After around 2 hours, everyone packs up and leaves quickly to limit the risk of being discovered. No drugs and alcohol are consumed in front of our cameras. Such hard evidence could cost them their lives. They may appear rebellious in comparison to the harsh social realities of Iran, a group who want to break all the rules and change their country. But Omid says they've already tried revolution, and several among them have been in prison. Now, he says, all they want is change.
The situation is better, but still we have some local problems. And I really accept sometimes their way of getting change step by step, because if you let people to have freedom in one day, I mean from tomorrow you can have like this freedom, then the country will break, you know, because it's like a big shock for the country. And they're not ready to have freedom yet. But they should make a plan, they should hurry up, you know.
For some, it's their lust for life that have led them here. For others, it's simply a way for them to go under the radar. Now, a few thousand young Iranians have been creating their own world in the desert. It may just be a drop in the ocean, but it bears witness to a profound change in a country where 60% of the population are less than 30 years old. And none of them know what life is like without the Ayatollahs and their regime.
Well, that was just a snippet of this week's Reporters, Young Iranians Living on the Edge, which will be broadcast this Saturday. You can watch it then, or indeed online at france24.com. That brings us to the end of this week's show. Do take care and see you again next time.